Sergeant Jacob Matthews had always believed in duty, honor, and country. For as long as he could remember, the desire to serve in the army burned fiercely within him. It wasn't just a job, it was a calling. Growing up in a small town, Jacob idolized his father, a decorated war veteran, whose stories of bravery and sacrifice during the Gulf War inspired him. Following in his father's footsteps, Jacob enlisted in the army at 18 and quickly rose through the ranks due to his unyielding dedication and tactical brilliance. By the age of 32, Jacob was a seasoned soldier, having served in numerous conflicts and earned the respect and admiration of his peers. However, nothing could have prepared him for the mission that would change his life forever. The operation took place in the rugged mountains of a war-torn country, where a notorious terrorist group had been wreaking havoc. Jacob was leading a team of young, inexperienced soldiers, most of whom were on their first deployment. Their mission was to infiltrate the terrorist stronghold and gather intelligence critical to the ongoing war efforts. As they navigated the treacherous terrain, an unexpected explosion ripped through the air, sending shockwaves of chaos through the team. Ambushed by the enemy, they found themselves pinned down, surrounded, and outgunned. Jacob's training and instincts kicked in. He barked orders, directing his men to take cover and return fire. During the intense firefight, Jacob noticed a young private, barely out of his teens, frozen in terror. Bullets whizzed past them, and the air was thick with the acrid smell of gunpowder. Without hesitation, Jacob sprinted across the open ground, grabbed the private, and pulled him to safety behind a boulder. Just as he did, a mortar shell exploded nearby, sending shrapnel flying in all directions. Jacob felt a searing pain in his right leg and collapsed to the ground. Looking down, he saw blood pouring from a gaping wound. The pain was excruciating, but he couldn't afford to think about it. His men needed him. Ignoring the agony, he continued to shout commands, coordinating their defense until reinforcements arrived and drove the terrorists back. Hours later, Jacob woke up in a military hospital, groggy and disoriented. A doctor stood by his bedside, delivering the devastating news. His right leg had been severely damaged and had to be amputated. The reality of his situation hit him like a sledgehammer. The leg was gone, along with his career as a soldier. In the weeks that followed, Jacob was airlifted back home, where he faced a new kind of battle, one against despair and hopelessness. He had sacrificed his leg to save his comrades, but the world seemed indifferent to his heroism. The army awarded him a medal, but the ceremony was brief and perfunctory, a mere formality. His superiors offered words of gratitude that felt hollow and insincere. Back in his hometown, Jacob struggled to adjust to civilian life. The small town that once revered him now seemed to forget his existence. People averted their eyes when they saw him, uncomfortable with his injury. Even his old friends, unsure of how to interact with him, slowly drifted away. He applied for jobs but was turned away repeatedly, employers unwilling to take a chance on a disabled veteran. Isolation became his constant companion. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. The once indomitable Jacob Matthews found himself battling depression and self-doubt. His physical therapy sessions were grueling, and every step with his prosthetic leg was a painful reminder of what he had lost. He began to question whether his sacrifice had been worth it. One rainy afternoon, Jacob sat alone in his modest apartment, staring at the framed photo of his unit on the wall. The faces of the young soldiers he had saved haunted him. Had they even remembered him? Had they moved on with their lives, leaving him behind? Unbeknownst to Jacob, those same young soldiers had not forgotten him. One of them, Private Tom Harris, had been particularly affected by Jacob's sacrifice. Tom had been the private Jacob saved during the ambush, and he owed his life to Jacob. Haunted by guilt and gratitude, Tom couldn't shake the image of his sergeant lying wounded on the battlefield. Tom had tried to visit Jacob in the hospital, but bureaucratic red tape and his own reassignment to another unit had made it impossible. Months later, after returning from another deployment, Tom decided to track Jacob down. He reached out to their old comrades, gathering information and rallying support. A plan began to take shape. Tom wanted to organize a reunion and recognition ceremony for Jacob, one that would truly honor his bravery. He contacted the local Veterans Association, explaining Jacob's story and enlisting their help. Slowly, the community began to take notice. People who had once turned away now listened, moved by the tale of the forgotten hero. The day of the reunion arrived. Tom and the other soldiers who had served under Jacob came together, sharing stories and memories. The Veterans Association arranged for a local hall to host the event, and news spread through the town. Curious and remorseful, the townspeople decided to attend. Jacob was hesitant when he received the invitation. Part of him wanted to decline, to avoid reopening old wounds. But something in Tom's letter stirred a flicker of hope within him. With a mixture of apprehension and determination, he agreed to go. When Jacob arrived at the hall, he was overwhelmed by the sight before him. The room was filled with familiar faces, his comrades, townspeople, even his old friends. A hush fell over the crowd as Tom stepped forward, his voice trembling with emotion. "Sergeant Matthews," Tom began, "we owe you our lives. You showed us what true courage looks like, and it's time we give you the recognition you deserve." Tears welled up in Jacob's eyes as the room erupted in applause. One by one, his comrades approached, each sharing their gratitude and recounting how Jacob's actions had saved them. The townspeople, ashamed of their previous indifference, offered heartfelt apologies and promises to support him. The local mayor presented Jacob with a plaque honoring his bravery and sacrifice, while the Veterans Association pledged to assist him with employment and rehabilitation. The outpouring of love and respect was overwhelming, and for the first time in months, Jacob felt a sense of belonging and purpose. As the evening drew to a close, Jacob stood before the crowd, his voice choked with emotion. "I didn't do it for recognition," he said. "I did it because it was my duty. But your support means more to me than I can express. Thank you." In the days that followed, Jacob found himself embraced by the community. He was offered a job at a local school, teaching history and sharing his experiences with the students. The townspeople rallied around him, ensuring he had the resources and support he needed. Jacob's life was far from easy, but he no longer felt alone. The hero who had once been forgotten was now a symbol of resilience and courage. His story served as a reminder that true heroism is not defined by medals or ceremonies, but by the lives touched and the sacrifices made. And so, Sergeant Jacob Matthews found redemption, not in the accolades of a distant battlefield, but in the hearts of those he had saved and the community that finally recognized his worth. His journey was one of pain and perseverance, but ultimately, it was a testament to the enduring spirit of a true hero.